This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gould.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. I am your host, Steve Gould. As the gentleman said, I always repeat that. Thanks for joining us, guys. This is the podcast, I think the premier police podcast that gets war stories, true, uninhibited, unedited stories from the men and women of law enforcement about what they really deal with out there. And it's been going great, guys. Got over 1,000 5-star reviews on, well, almost 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and all the other apps. So if you love the show and you want to show that, just go ahead and give it a 5-star review. I like that. And then also, if you really love the show, you can support through Patreon. The link is in the show notes. You can be a patrolman or sergeant. You get a couple different things with those two steps. Either way, I will mail you a Things Police See vinyl sticker, and you'll have direct access to me, and you can ask questions to ask the guests and stuff like that. So it's a good time, and that's the best way to really support it. But if you can't, don't worry about it. The show's going to remain free, as it was always been since its inception. The point is to get these stories out to as many people as possible, free of charge. So if you can't afford it, no worries there at all. Today we have a great episode. I've really run into some luck with game wardens, conservation officers. So I have another conservation officer, but he also did a bunch of other stuff besides that as well. Really excited to have him. He was Michigan conservation officer / detective, assistant team leader, Michigan State Narcotics Team, and he retired the chief of police for Ferris State University, which is a very interesting resume. I can't wait to talk to him about that, and he's definitely got some stories. Without further ado, let me bring on Bruce Borkovich. Sir.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for coming on the podcast, brother. Thank
you for having me. My brother John had a lot of fun with it and told me about it, so I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, that was a really fun interview with John. He's a hell of a guy, and he said, "I'm always digging for more guests." And he goes, "I know the perfect guest, my brother." I said, "Send him my way." Awesome.
Right. We both wrote a book about our adventures, and the book does very well. People really seem to enjoy it. So yeah, we try to get out there a little bit.
Oh wait, you wrote a separate book from what? A different book, right? You each wrote your own book?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh,
I wrote a book called Wild Things. Mine is a little different than John's in that I spent about 7 years as a detective. If you know the state of Michigan at all, I had the whole Lower Peninsula. We only had 2 detectives for the whole state.
Okay.
But we also did all the department's deep cover, undercover work. So I did that for about 7 years. So a lot of my book are some of the craziest, wildest, most successful undercover cases we've ever had in Michigan history. So
I love it, man.
It's very similar. It's called Wild Things.
Okay, I just grabbed a screenshot of it for from later on so we can put it up. I had no idea you wrote a book. You didn't put it in the Calendly thing, but
yes.
We'll definitely get into that. So I have a question for you right off the top. It doesn't seem like conservation detective, then narcotics team would translate into the chief of police for a university. So I'm just curious, at being a cop myself, what was that transition like, and what size department was at Ferris State University?
Right. It does seem a strange way to get here. The advantages were that having had worked for 3 different police authorities prior, it really gave me a well-rounded view of how departments run and policies and those sorts of things. Ferris State is at the time when I was there, we only had, 10, 11,000 people on the Big Rapids campus. The department was about, I had an assistant chief, a detective, and then I think we had about 9 officers. So it was 24-hour police service, but
Sure.
not a big department. And probably the biggest transition is getting into what I call make-believe world of higher education. It's kind of a make-believe world. And I'm an old-fashioned guy, and most universities are, let's just say, they're very progressive, and so navigating that and trying to keep people safe it was a challenge. It was good, but it was a challenge.
I can only imagine that. I mean, it is so true at academia in general. It is so progressive, and it's got to be difficult. Because I remember I've had friends that are school resource officers, and they taste that a little bit, where it's like you catch a kid with something, or there's a fight, or there's drugs, and the school seems like they never wanted charges. They always wanted a different course, even if the kid really, really earned the charges, if you know what I mean. And it's got to be It's got to be similar when you're a college cop, and depending on the college and the state. I have a friend who's a college cop in Arizona, and they really don't mind if you do police work on the campus. It's fine with them.
Yeah.
But when you get to bluer states like you live in or I live in, that's totally different.
Yeah, it is. And you have to have a little different mindset as a chief that, listen, we're not here to see how many college kids we can throw in jail or how many we can write tickets to.
Well, that's true also, yeah.
Absolutely. If there's a way to educate them and keep the place safe at the same time without, them ending up in jail or with a ticket or with any type of criminal record, then, that's good, because young people do dumb things. I can put me first in that line when I was that age. And so, those were some of the challenges, is keeping the expectations are very high, that we need this to be a super safe area, but sometimes the reality, the funding, some of the battles you fight seem contrary to that. So
I can imagine. Yeah, near where I work is the University of Massachusetts Amherst, which I think is like 50,000 kids, and their police department is, I think, larger than the city they're in. And, the mounted units, the whole deal, they have all the funding that they want. But it's, it's one of those things where you always say, it's like the kids stay the same age. And as an officer, you age. So, you start having to muckle a 19-year-old football player, and you're now 45 and you got a bad hip or, whatever, your lower back. And it's a challenging job.
Right on. Yeah.
Yeah. So, when you become the chief there, is there had you ever had an admin role before, like budget and all that stuff?
No, not really. It was, the closest to that when I was the assistant team leader on the drug team. I retired from the state, the DNR, as a conservation officer on a Friday, and went to work for the drug team the following Monday. So I had 2 days off. And then eventually I was a case detective. And then eventually I became the assistant team leader. So that put me into a more of a leadership role, not a lot with, budgets and things, although we did have to administrate, we had to deal with forfeiture. We had to tightly administrate,
sure.
Buy money for doing deals, tightly administrate what we paid informants. So there was some accounting there, but really no. The front office, the big office, did the budgeting. So it was a jump, but I was ready for it. I was ready. I remember as I got close to leaving the team going to Ferris, I remember we went to serve a search warrant. We always had keys for these apartment complexes. We'd get it from the managers. They liked it because then we didn't knock their door down and do a lot of damage. And this was my fault, but we got a little lackadaisical because we had a key. We didn't have our entry tools with us. Mm-hmm. And our point man went to enter the door, turned the key, and the key broke off in the door. Oh. Now we've already knocked and announced. So I had the guys get out of the way, and I think I kicked that door 15 times. It's a steel door with a steel frame, and it isn't like TV where you kick it once and it goes in. And it didn't open. And later that night, I was in my mid-50s, and I realized I'm probably getting a little bit old to be kicking steel doors. So that's when I started to shop around. Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, I'm no doubt you had the leadership skills. It just must have been like day one as a chief. Did you have at the time a deputy chief who could be like, hey, this is how we do payroll, this is how we do, or this is how we, do policy, or that must have been like drinking from a fire hose, just absorbing a whole new department.
Yeah, it was the two. I did. I had a very competent assistant chief. We've been there a long time. I had office staff and one of the office managers. She took care of purchasing and those sorts of things and a lot of the budget. So really, it was just to come in and get acclimated and kind of decompress and go from a drug team mindset, or you're kicking doors down and pointing guns at people every day, to the kind, gentle
Yeah.
college atmosphere. And I know the team leader and I, before I left, we did a little math and we figured out the 7 years I was there, I was involved in executing 300 search warrants, about 300, and probably 200 of those were dynamic entries, where we're blowing a door down. So that was a little bit of a transition to go from pointing guns at people every day to the kind, gentle world of higher education.
Yeah, that's surprising. You must have interviewed really well, because that is not a move I see a college making. Being like, hey, let's get this hard-nosed drug cop who's a team leader for a narcotics team. He seems like he would be gentle with the children.
Yeah, I guess maybe I just didn't have much competition. I don't know. But, it worked out.
Yeah, heck yeah. It's very cool, man. It's very interesting to me. So, Bruce, can you take us back to young game warden on the job, to your first hot call, the first call that really got your blood pumping?
Yeah, in many of the rural areas of Michigan, the cops are spread pretty thin, and I always had a great relationship with the city officers and the deputies and the state troopers. But very often, conservation officers were by far the closest car to an emergency or the closest car for backup. So I remember so this wasn't a wildlife enforcement situation, but I was patrolling out in the northwest part of the county and near a mile from a lake, a pretty popular lake. Anyhow, a call came in of a B&E in progress. It was an older lady calling it in that they came home. Her husband, who's in his late 60s, caught this guy breaking in and they're fighting. And call went out and there wasn't a deputy or trooper anywhere near this call. So they asked if I could go and hold it down, until they got there. And so, of course, I'm young and on fire, and boy, heart's beating now,
I bet.
And so I show up, and I'm wondering, is like a homeowner going to be dead here? Did the guy have a gun? Did he break in and get a gun? And I show up and I see a guy on the ground not moving, and I kind of assume that's the homeowner, and there's another guy standing over him, and I'm thinking, okay, he's hurt him or killed him. And then I get closer and I realize, I'm not going to say the name, but it's the guy standing up. He was 69, I think, and he was the owner of a sawmill, a real good guy. But this guy had been handling logs and firewood his whole life.
Strong guy.
This was not a man to mess with, not a man to trifle with.
Yeah.
And the guy on the ground is a big guy, and the guy on the ground saw me, and he almost burst into tears. He was so happy to see me because the homeowner proceeded to kick his butt. And I think the guy on the ground, the burglar, I think figured he was going to kill him. And so, I was a savior. So I go from, heart pumping 200 times a minute, ready to see what's going on here, to almost laughing. And I got, this guy couldn't get in handcuffs and couldn't get in the back of my car fast enough. So, and then the homeowner, started to get a little nervous, that I roughed this guy up too much. And I don't want to say his name. Sir, I think you felt threatened, and I think you used the force necessary to protect yourself and your wife. And he's like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, put that in the report.
So I right. I had a lot of stuff like that, but that was probably the first one where, wow, I'm going to something pretty exciting here.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are like a Donnybrook like that, or a attempted B&E, or like you said, on the way there, you just don't know what you're going to find. And pretty much in most states, it seems like if someone tries to come in your house, you can do almost anything to them from what I've seen in cases and be okay. If they're trying to get in your house and you just, if they have goose eggs all over their head, you broke their teeth, you beat them up, as long as you can articulate them trying to get in your house, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Seems like.
That's it. And, in Michigan, short of deadly force, you still have to meet we have a Michigan Self-Defense Act, which says that, you have to be in imminent danger of death or grave bodily injury. And so, but I think you're right, short of, shooting someone, you surely can protect yourself. Here's a case for a 69-year-old and his wife are home, and the bad guy was late 30s, maybe 40. And he can certainly say, I was concerned for our safety and I had to get physical with this guy. So.
Yeah, I'm sure that guy, after all that manual labor, probably had bones like cast iron, to just beat the guy down. That happened.
He was a tough guy.
Sounds like it. Yeah, that happened to a buddy of mine in college. They got into a mix-up at a local bar, and the local kids found the dorm he was in, and he's living in my buddy that is like 6'3", 220, and then he lived with a bunch of athletes. So these guys burst into the apartment and they beat the bag out of these guys from the bar that were trying to break in. I mean, one of them was in the hallway and he had so many lumps. It's like he didn't even look human. And the campus cops showed up and they were like, it's fine. So they tried to break in. Yeah. They admitted it. That's what you get. They must have burst in that room and saw all these 6+ footers and been like, this was a mistake.
Yep. Mess with the bull and you get the horn.
Yeah. I had the opportunity when I was in LA. At one point I guarded LL Cool J. Real name Todd Smith, by the way. But they call him the Big Cat. He's huge. He's a big dude. And me and the other guy guarding him was like just for looks, because he can certainly handle himself. But he lived in Sherman Oaks and he had a guy break into his house. Guy got halfway through the window, and by the time the police showed up, he had all of his ribs broken and his jaw was broken. Because LL Cool J's hands are the size of catcher's mitts, and he just started. Yeah. So don't be an E, folks. You could really get a good ass whooping in that way.
There's a lesson to be learned.
Absolutely. Bruce, can you tell us about a strange or bizarre thing you dealt with on the job?
I was thinking of this, and there's so many, it was hard. But one day, it was the opening day of small game season in Michigan, which is September 15th. And I happened to be in plain clothes in a plain vehicle. I forgot what I was working on, but I was working on something that I needed to sneak around in. And anyhow, we live in a very rural, or where I was assigned was a very rural farm county. And out in the middle of farmland, a call comes in of a drive-by shooting. And I'm thinking a drive-by shooting, and a good friend of mine, a trooper, gets the call, and in typical state police fashion, and this isn't a criticism, this is a compliment, they start reacting. They've got a chopper coming from Lansing. They've got units coming from all over,
all the resources.
Well, exactly. And again, like my whole career, for some reason, when something crazy went down, I was a mile or two away, it seemed like. So, and I was an action junkie, so I had to get involved. So I show up, and there's a car stopped in the middle of the road. It's a paved road. There's 2 females in it and 2 little kids in the back seat. And the driver, she's sitting there kind of in and out of it. And I look, and there's a bullet hole through the driver's side door. And I check her, and I can see a bullet hole through her top that she had on and some blood. And so we're getting the proper medical people and all the other cops are responding and everything. And it's just, something's not right here in the middle of nowhere. And these aren't drug dealers. These are 2 moms out with their kids. I mean, something just, geez. So state police get there. Yeah. They get there and they kind of take it over, and I'm just stepping back trying to figure it out. And it was really nice that I was in plain clothes. Well, I see a little Amish kid standing there. He's probably 10 years old. And he's got his hands in his pockets. He's got probably his little brother's pants on that were way above his ankles, a cute little kid. And I wander over there and I said, how you doing? And because they lived there. There was an Amish farm right close. Good. He said, and I'm thinking, something doesn't add up. Plus, I noticed the hole in the car, the diameter was quite small, and the hole that came through the interior was quite small, and the hole in her chest was not real big. And to me, and there was no exit wound out of her. To me, I really felt this is probably a 22 rimfire. That's what I thought it was.
Right.
And so now I'm thinking, is this a hunting accident? It can't be a drive-by shooting. So anyhow, I talked to the kid and I said, you out hunting today? He says, oh no, I'm only 10. I said, okay. I said, anyone else out hunting? He says, my brother. Okay. How old's your brother? 16. And what's he hunting? Squirrels. Oh, that's good. Opening day. It was opening day of squirrel season. I said, what does he hunt with? A shotgun? No, he's got Grandpa's 22. Okay. So where's your brother? Up at the house. So I wander up there, and the kid's up there, and his eyes are, big as coffee cups. And I showed him my badge, introduced him, and you out hunting? Yes, sir. And so there was about a 40-acre woodlot that was adjacent to the road. And then right next to it was a plowed field. Well, the kid was out in that woodlot. We figured about 417 yards from the road, and there was a squirrel in the tree, and he missed the squirrel, and that bullet arced all the way 417 yards, and it just happened to hit a car going 55 miles an hour down the road and went right into this lady's chest. You
Wow.
could try to duplicate that artificially, and you could probably fire 1,000 shots and never do it. And so I went over, and before the chopper got there, before we had 100 police officers, I grabbed my friend, the trooper, and explained what happened. And we figured it out. We kind of de-escalated. The woman ended up being okay, and we de-escalated. And then this poor kid, this was a freak accident. This wasn't carelessness or recklessness, but
right.
I did have to do a report, and the prosecutor looked at it, and we decided that the Amish folks in this community are such good people, and this kid was such a nice kid, and so we decided he'd get. I think they charged him with careless discharge of a firearm. He got a diversion program, which means if he followed his probation, there was no conviction, and I think we made him take hunter safety again. And so that was. There's so many strange things that I ran into, but that was bizarre that something like that happened.
22 is quite the round. Everybody downplays the 22, but I mean, 400 yards and still went through a car door and then into somebody's chest. That's pretty nuts.
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
It's crazy, and probably more people are killed with 22s than any other caliber in the United States. It is a deadly round. People tend to relax around them and think they're not that dangerous, and they certainly are.
Yeah, absolutely. Geez, I always loved that 22 short because it just is almost silent. It's a great squirrel round, because it's like a hopped up pellet gun,
Yep.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah,
Bruce, I don't want to stifle you or keep you from sharing anymore. If you have another bizarre story, I'd love to hear it.
That's the main one. Real quick, I had another one. A lady called 911, and she's crying and screaming. She's got two little kids, a toddler and a newborn. The newborn's got a doctor's appointment. It's been sick, and every time she tries to leave her house, there's a big tom turkey that's attacking her. And I'm thinking,
jeez.
Yeah, right. But she's just panicking, freaking out. So they send me up there, and I show up. There's a huge tom. This is in the springtime when they're breeding.
Yep.
There's a huge tom in the yard just strutting back and forth, and she's at the door inside the house on 911 crying, and I realize he starts coming after me, and I realize this is legitimate, and they can get aggressive.
Oh yeah.
It's rare, but they absolutely can get aggressive. So we're kind of in a neighborhood, sort of. There's some other people around, and I realize sometimes you just have to put animals down because this is going to be a problem. But I didn't want to pull a 40 caliber out and shoot this thing. So we had the expandable batons. We called them the batanias, that Tanya Harding hit Nancy Kerrigan with, and
Right.
I now he wants to fight with me. So I lured him out in the woods where the neighbors weren't looking, and then taunted him, and he came right at me, and I gave him a backhand with that baton. But another strange. I mean, I had 100, strange occurrences like that. But just another quick story of a
Yeah, that is
bizarre day at work.
so weird. I've been attacked by our rooster, and there's something about
Yeah,
it that, I mean, this is sound dumb, but it is freaky when an animal decides to choose you and like to go after you, like with all of its
it is.
aggression. I mean, the biggest thing about the rooster is it always has
Yes,
like poops and dirt on its claws, on its spurs,
yes,
and it was climbing
yep,
up my leg, and
yep,
but he does a good job. We live out in the country, and I think he is a big part of the reason why our flock has been so well protected. Because he is a balls to the wall type of rooster. So he was attacking me
yeah,
one day, and he wouldn't stop. So
yes, yeah,
oh, go ahead, Bruce.
yeah. No, we have chickens too, and we had a male guinea that was kind of doing the same thing. He was so annoying, though. Guineas are so annoying and so
Oh
loud.
yeah, so loud.
I caught him one day trying to kill one of my hens. Had picked her head. It was. I thought he had opened her brains, and so I got her away from her, and a 22 Hornet rifle, and I had a little get together with the guinea, and let's just say the girls are all bachelorettes now. So
Yeah, yeah. Our rooster's the same way. He's good for defense, but he's also hard on the girls. And I actually, when he wouldn't leave me
yeah,
alone that day, I kicked him right in the head. I felt his little head bounce right off the tip of my boot. He, like the Matrix, he went
yep,
backwards, caught himself on the ground with his wings, popped back up on his feet, and was kind of like, like checking me out, like maybe I shouldn't screw with him type of deal. But yeah, he's friggin' nuts, man. And when I was actually natural resource officer on Cape Cod for 4 years, and we had something similar where
oh,
this woman had this older car with shiny hubcaps, and we get a call that this woman can't get out of her car. She's trying to get into her driveway, and there's a Tom Turkey there. He's seeing this, distorted view of himself in the hubcaps
yep,
and just attacking the hell out of her car. He won't leave her alone. She can't get out of the car. So, but
yep,
that was the only
yep,
time we dealt with that. So, like you're saying, I think it's pretty rare.
yeah, yeah. It happens, but doesn't happen every day.
Well, they call them turkeys for a reason, right? Let's see.
Yep.
Bruce, can you tell us about your most intense or terrifying call?
Yeah. So again, it was my brothers and I were all. My oldest brother also was a game warden. The three of us, first time in the history of the United States that we knew of that there
That's
were three
cool.
in at the same time. But this was and so there were so many cases because we work so remotely. We're out alone in the middle of the county, oftentimes with people who are armed. But this was probably the most terrifying one was when I was with the drug team. We had an informant that there's a saying in the drug world, today's informants, tomorrow's suspect, and
Sure.
and you use them. I had one of the guys who trained me. He said informants are like Bic lighters. You use them till they don't work anymore, and you throw them away. So
Right.
this guy had, every once in a while he'd come up with something good. Well, he came and he says he put together a kilo deal. Now this was in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, which is a destination town. It's where it isn't a source town. People don't get kilos in Mount Pleasant and distribute it elsewhere. It's where coke dope shows up. So, but this was going to be in Lansing, which is our state capital. So we decided we think it was credible enough. So we had a ratty old car from a forfeiture, and I was, because I'm quite a bit older than the foreman, I was posing as his uncle. So he set up the deal and said, "Hey, my uncle's going to bring me down," and so we had $27,000 in a Bud Light, empty Bud Light of all things. We wouldn't use that this
Right, of
day
course
and
not.
age, but we had $27,000 in there to get this kilo, and so we take off. It's about an hour drive from Mount Pleasant where we're at, and the informant's on the phone with the main suspect, and they're going back and forth, and how's this going to work, and who's your uncle, and what does he look like, all this kind of stuff. So we get down there, and at the time I had a Para Ordnance 45 semi-automatic that I carried
Nice.
because it was stainless steel. It kind of looked like a gangster gun, and that way I thought, well, if any of the bad guys ever see me with it, it doesn't look like a cop's gun. And I remember getting down there. I just had started to get some feelings, so I tucked it right underneath my right butt cheek because I was driving the car. And we get down there, and the organization of this crew was unbelievable. So first they tell us, come here and park in a parking lot. We do. 2 minutes later, a car does a slow roll by us, just eyeballing us, takes off. Then the bad guy says, "Okay, come over and go through the car wash." Okay, so we go there, and they've got some of their people working at the car wash, and they're leaning in and looking inside the vehicle, and checking this out and that out,
Wow.
and then they sent us about 4 or 5 different locations. One of the crews checking us out was 2 females, and they come up and want to roll one window down, and at first they're kind of a little flirty, and then they're kind of trying to be tough girls, and all the time I'm getting more and more bothered by what's going on here. It just isn't making sense. And I had already decided if someone comes up and tries to rip us, I am not going to hesitate. Someone's going to get a 45 slug in the head, and
Right.
we'll go from there. And to kind of not drag the story out too long, after probably 45 minutes of dancing around with them, we had 2 surveillance crews. We had our crew from Mount Pleasant, and we were coordinating with the Lansing crew. And our surveillance teams are very, very good, very, very well trained, and very good. And so the surveillance crews are trying to pick up these satellite cars that are checking them out, seeing where they're going and who they're meeting with and everything else. And eventually, the lieutenants there all agree this something isn't right, and they get a couple of state police cars and Lansing police cars coordinated, and they come in and they jump as many of these people as they can. Long story short, they get the main suspect, and there's enough here with recordings and everything to charge him with a conspiracy, and he ends up admitting it was going to be a rip. They were going to come to the car. They were waiting to get us in the right position, and they were going to come and rob us at gunpoint. And one of the cars had a 9mm in it, and of course, the bad guys thought it was going to be a robbery. It was going to be a gunfight because they didn't know. They thought I was just Uncle Joe, and so that was probably the most intense thing. I was out of my nest in the big city, had $27,000 in the car with us, and there are people who kill their mother for $27,000. They wouldn't hesitate to kill
Oh,
me.
yeah.
So that was probably one of the most intense things. Yeah.
That's sketchy, man. I don't know how you guys do that. I wear my in like when it comes to like adrenaline dumps in like tense situations. Obviously, I've been doing it, so I'm okay at it. But I definitely I'm not good at keeping my cool. Like if I got senses that things were starting to go awry, I don't think I would like be able to. They would know. They would be like, this guy looks stressed out. I would be like tight-lipped and like my adrenaline would be going. It's got to be a skill you hone over time, or you're just born with it.
Yeah. No, well, I think it's a little bit of both. Prior to getting to the drug team, I'd done about 7 years of undercover work with the DNR. And back then we did deep cover work. So we, one of the cases, I was undercover with these people for 9 months, but I spent, I think, 4 days living with them. I was in their ratty house, sleeping on their
Wow.
ratty couch, doing all the crazy things they're doing. And we were in a remote area of northern Michigan where there was no cell service. So we couldn't have a surveillance team. And yeah, I had the option not to do it because I was going to just be on my own. And, I chose to do it. But you really learn how to think on your feet and how to react and how to avoid problems. And what I found is that as I got further into the career and into undercover work, the more dangerous a situation became, the calmer I became. And that's probably something of a personality trait, but I became calmer and really had the ability to think things through. I remember in one of the DNR undercover cases, we ended up at the bad guy's house, and the main guy brought out a Glock pistol, and we're sitting at a dining room table with about 12 people, and he was nervous about me. And he went back, brought out a pistol case, and then opened it up, and he isn't pointing it at me, but he's probably 3 feet across the table from me, and he's just staring me in the eyes. And he's got his finger on the trigger, magazine's in the gun, so I'm assuming, it's loaded. And he was trying to get me to react. He was trying to spook me, and I didn't bite. And but I remember getting very calm. I had a 5-shot snub-nosed revolver hidden in thunderwear in my crotch area because no one's ever going to go near my crotch if they try to pat me down. They're
Right.
going to get a fight. And so, but I remember 2 things: thinking I don't have enough bullets to fight my way out of this, but I also very quickly prioritized who's going to. I was close enough where I'm sure I could make headshots. So I had everyone prioritize. Okay, the guy who had the Glock, he's going to get it first. There were 2 young teenage kids there. They probably aren't a problem. This guy's going to get it. So I had my 5 with 5 rounds. I had the 5 people I was going to shoot. But it's just probably a experience and training, but also my personality type, that the higher the stress situation I was in, the calmer I tended to get. So
Yeah, like Wyatt Earp, man. They said Wyatt Earp wasn't he wasn't the fastest or the best shooter, but he didn't get stressed like a normal person. He just methodically, like smooth as fast. You know that saying? He methodically
yes,
took aim, cocked his hammer, and shot you.
Yeah.
And he was never shot. Both his brothers were shot. He was never shot.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And it could be he's low IQ like me. I think maybe if you're not real smart, that's how it works.
I doubt that. That's funny though. I was going to say, I just read a quote that you just reminded me of. General Mattis said in police work or soldiering, he was referring to, every time you meet somebody, you should have a plan to kill them, which is a very dark thing to say, but it sounds like that's what you were doing.
Absolutely. I would tell, even when I was a chief at Ferris, I said, be nice to people, be courteous, polite, treat them with respect, and have a plan to kill everyone you meet.
Yeah.
And, I would always show recruits. I would tell them the first time I was going to be around them, or when I taught in the academy, I said, I want you to bring a $1 bill with you tomorrow morning. They'd look at me, just bring the $1 bill. And if you look on a $1 bill, the eagle has in his talons, he has the olive branches of peace in one talon and the arrows of war in the other talon. And I would tell them, that's how you should approach every day. Everyone you come up to, extend the olive branches of peace. Don't come up and be aggressive and be a jerk. You're extending the olive branches of peace, but the arrows of war are in your other hand behind your back, and you have a plan to destroy everyone you meet. So
Yep.
I think that's probably a good mindset.
Unfortunately, that's the way it has to be. My dad was a cop for 32 years. He told me the same thing along those lines. He said, you're going to arrest people. You're going to see them again. You might see them at the stop, at the local stop and shop when you're with your family or whatever. So treat everybody with respect and be polite until it's time not to. And you'll know when that is.
That's right.
That was his advice.
Yep.
Bruce, I'd like to ask you a little bit more because it was fascinating, the 4-day undercover thing. So you're eating, you're sleeping, you're maybe drinking with these guys. Did you, was there any point when you spent this time with them that you started to have kind of an affinity towards them, be like, well, these aren't that bad of guys, and, or, you know, I can see the good in them, but they're really, what were they out there poaching or something?
Yeah, they were poaching. They were hardcore poachers. And I didn't hate them, but I had a job. The real secret to undercover work is to focus on your objective.
Sure.
What do you do, or what's your goal here? And that's what drives you and keeps you going, and maybe keeps you safe. So, uh, they weren't evil people, not at all. They were, terrible to the resources. I've got I do public presentations. I just spoke at a conference not long ago, and I've got a PowerPoint that I use, and I used to wear a hidden camera for a lot of those interactions, and I've got the main character is sitting there bragging. He says that one year, he says, I kept the damn book. And he says one year he shot like 70 some dogs, 40 some house cats. They'd go out all night, and every animal they saw they killed. Now these were people's pets, and they were
Wow.
out poaching, but they'd come across a dog, they'd shoot it and kill it. And they'd come across a cat, they'd shoot it and kill it. And a deer, or bobcats, whatever. And then it's kind of funny, because then at the end of that tape, this was shortly before we did the takedown, he says, and after all these years, he says, he knocks on the table, knock on wood, I've never been busted by the DNR. Of course, he's sitting and talking to his best friend, who's a detective with the DNR. Yeah. Yeah. But
Wow.
yeah, it's crazy. You're doing what they do. I'm so concerned to not make mistakes. You've got a cover story. My cover was that I was a builder, because I'm a pretty handy guy and I could talk the language and do that. And you're eating their food and sleeping there. I can tell you, 4 days of that, I'm a very resilient. I had two older brothers who beat the snot out of me all the time, and I'm a very resilient person who can take a lot. But after 4 days, my brain was getting fried. I needed to get out of there, and we found a way. I had to go back for business just to get out of there, because I was going nuts.
Yeah, sound like rough guys. Especially, I mean, that's a weird impulse to just want to kill every creature that walks in front of you.
Yeah, and they were in particular, they were killing wild animals and selling and marketing them, and that's why our special investigation unit got involved. The uniform off. Some guys out poaching a couple of deer a year, then the uniform guys work them and catch them. But these folks were killing and selling. The one, I go into the story in detail in the book, but one of the guys, the main suspects in there. They knew what my cover was, that I built all kinds of custom homes in Southeast Michigan and or up north for people, and people often want mounted animals. They want it to decorate their house. And one guy found a mother bear, a sow bear, and three cubs hibernating in February,
Yep.
and stuck a 22 in there and killed the mother and two of the
Oh
cubs. One
boy.
cub got away, and and yeah, sold them to me for $650 undercover. But that's the kind of people they are. I mean, you're a top quality person when you stick a rifle in a den while bears are hibernating and shoot them in the head and kill them and sell them.
Jeez.
That's a real top shelf person.
Yeah, really. Yeah, that's awful. Damn. That's fascinating to me, Bruce. Can we switch gears here for a minute? And can you tell us about a positive or heartwarming situation you dealt with as either a warden or a narcotics cop?
Yeah, I can tell you, a couple. One, I remember it was the opening morning of a deer season, and I caught a guy, and he's dragging a deer out. He had a single shot, 20 gauge shotgun, and the deer, no tag on it. I checked him. The guy was basically homeless. He lived in a shack in the woods, and um, he had no money. He lived off the land. He had no hunting license, and so what I did is I made him. I said, I don't care if you have to go pick up beer bottles and cans. You're going to go in. I'm going to give you 2 weeks to get enough money to go buy a hunting license. Number one, I didn't arrest him. I let him keep the deer. And then I told him, you have to go buy a hunting license. But I was able to, over a few years until he moved somewhere else, every year I would take him. Sometimes we'd get evidence animals, a turkey or a deer or something that was poached. And I was able to take him to meat and drop it off there. And he really appreciated, he was decent. He wasn't asking for special favors. He was, listen, I have no income. I have no way to, this is how I live. This is what I eat. And so that was nice. There was another one, though, that probably even more heartwarming. We had a female informant I had on the drug team. And she was likable, but she was an addict. She was desperate. And she actually did some pretty good work for us. And we worked with her. She helped work her charges off because we had her, and that's why they become informants. But probably 5 years after I dealt with her, I hadn't seen her. I hear her say, she knew my first name because we didn't want her slipping up and say, yeah, I called Detective Borkovich, So we had street names, and that's what she knew me as. And I hear her say, Ringo. And I looked, and I could hardly recognize her. She had cleaned up. She was actually an attractive woman. She had cleaned herself up, and she burst into tears and came up, gave me a big hug, and said how we saved her life. She says she would be dead now, either from a crime or an overdose. And she had cleaned up. She got a boyfriend, and even had a baby.
That's
And
great.
she was it was almost uncomfortable. Yeah, it was almost uncomfortable. She was so thankful that, and being an informant's not fun, and it's dangerous, and we put her through a lot, but so that was pretty cool to know that you at least changed one person's life based on what you did.
That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like she beat the odds because you hear so many informants just they continue to use or they end up ODing, or they never get out of it. So it sounds like she really made it. That's incredible.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It is a hard thing to get out of, and people are genetically predisposed to addiction. Some people are, and so it was pretty cool, pretty rewarding.
That is awesome. Bruce, can you tell us? This is the last question, but it's a real popular one because we get a lot of people listening to the show that are in police academy or in backgrounds, or they're thinking about doing it, getting into law enforcement. Do you have a piece of wisdom you can impart on new candidates for police work?
Yes, and I sometimes have mentored or spoken to new police chiefs. I'll tell them the same thing. The secret to being a brand new officer, the secret to being a police chief is it's not a secret, and it's not real technical or in depth, but sometimes it's hard to do. But it's there's two parts to it. First of all, love the people you serve. Let's say that you're a cop in a big urban area with a lot of crime, maybe a lot of minority population, a lot of poverty, maybe poor relations. It doesn't matter. If you decide to be a cop in that area, you better learn to love the people you serve. And so love the people and communities you serve, and every single day work to build their trust. Don't ever betray their trust, because it takes forever to get it and you lose it in a second. But I think the mistake a lot of officers and police chiefs make is they don't follow one of those two rules. To begin with, they don't really love their community because of whatever reason. And then they don't really focus on building trust. My brothers and I were very aggressive, hard workers, and we very seldom ever got assaulted in our career. Now, we're all big physical guys, stayed in shape, but we also treated people well, treated people with respect. And there's really a tiny fraction of people out there that are really bad, evil people who want to hurt you. It's a tiny fraction. There are people out there who will assault you because they're drunk, they're high, they're desperate, they're scared. There's lots of reasons, but there's just very, very few people who truly are evil, who truly want to hurt you. So So that's the advice to a new cop. That's the advice to a new police chief. And then I'll give you one more, because I told some police chiefs this. For a new chief, your first day on the job, type your letter of resignation, have it done, have it filled out. And the first time someone, city councilman, mayor, business people, whomever, first time someone wants to pull the cancel culture on you, wants to have you do something you don't believe in, or something's not right, or else you lose your job, don't hesitate. Reach in the drawer, hand them the letter of resignation, and go work somewhere else. Because I think we've seen way too many police chiefs that have compromised their values and their morals just to survive. They're the chief, they're making good money. Gee, where else will I work? And
Sure.
And I think as soon as you've done that, you've lost the battle in law enforcement. So type that letter and pull it out if you need it.
I love it. I never heard that before, but that's great advice. Absolutely. And that's, you can't be compromised, you got to be a leader.
That's right.
Very good advice. Bruce, thank you so much. Before I let you go here, let's talk a little bit about the book and where people can find it.
Yeah. So the book is $20, and if you go to www.bruceborkovich, so that's Bruce Borkovich is Borkovich, so www.bruceborkovich.com. That's the website, and you can push a button and pay with PayPal. I do get cases where people don't have PayPal. If so, message me through the website, send me a check, and you'll have to pay a little bit for shipping also. But that's the way to get the book. And I tell everyone I sell a book to, if you don't like it, send it back and I'll give you your money back. People really enjoy the book. And the book was also written, there's no profanity or sex or anything in it. You could have your 9-year-old daughter read this book. And I had good friends here, and they're wonderful people. She works for a local community mental health, and her husband's a sheriff's deputy, and they have 2 wonderful daughters. And the girls really love to be outdoors, and they bought it for their daughter, and then their daughter had a sleepover, had 4 girls in there, and Mom hears the girls just laughing and laughing. And she sneaks into the bedroom, and they're sitting there taking turns reading the book, and they're laughing about falling off the chair, because I don't mince any words in there about the dumb things I did, and I start off as what I did as a kid, and so I pretty much bare my soul on why
That's
I
great.
ended up like I am, and some of the dumb things I did before the job and afterward. And the girls just got such a kick out of it. But I've had several parents say that their kids absolutely love the book. And of course, it's more written for grown-ups, but it's completely appropriate for a young teenager.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. That's like part of the proofs for the New Testament is they put the embarrassing and stuff in there as well. They didn't hold back, right?
Right on. Yeah, right on.
I love it, man. Well, I'll put a link to your website in the show notes so everybody can go check out your book. Bruce, it was an honor to have you on. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I'm gonna do the outro to the show. Just got to thank the Patreon sponsors, and then can you hang out for just like 3 minutes? I'll be back with you.
I certainly can. Thank you.
All right, brother. Thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Bruce Borkovich. Great stories, fun stories. These Michigan game wardens, man, they they get up to it. It's insane what these guys do. All right, this is the time of the show where I thank the very important Patreon sergeants. I thank you so much for your support. Who I'm talking about is the great Andy Biggs, Greg Gadboy, Adam Mihal, the great Chris June, Gary Steiner, Jake Pinedo, John Shoemaker, the great Lauren Stimson, the handsome Lane Campbell, Seth Wright, William James Long, that's Deputy William James Long to you, thank you very much, James Rose, the great Tony Fahey, ladies and gentlemen, Ben Peters, Braden Walker, the great Jason Lau, Mike Wynn, Sasha McNabb, the great Scott Minkler, Tammy Walsh holding it down at State Police Dispatch. Sean Clifford, Dennis Carrasquillo, Iceman from Motor Cop Chronicles, the great George Tessier, I'll see you at church, brother. Nathan Gowan, the great Nick News, Scott Young, Thomas Connell, Wayne M. Miller, retired ATF and author. Thank you, Wayne. Dan Carlson from Burley Boards, talented carpenter. Doug and Kelly Newman, I'll see you at church. I love ya. Joe DeVries, the great Dave Ellman, Elliot Sykes, Holly Vanover, Richard Tolles, keep on trucking, brother. Brittany Sims, Christian, Jace Crow, the great Brad Thompson, Kyle Roberts, Zach Haney, and the great Nancy Hammond. Thank you guys so much for the continued support. I truly appreciate it. Pay all the bills for the show and any expenses that come up. And once in a while, I'll have to replace equipment or upgrade something, and you guys make that happen and help me do that. And I truly appreciate it. So guys, I will see you again next week.